Hey, I'm Mr. Williamson, and this video is the second video in the evolution unit, and we're going to talk about Charles Darwin and natural selection. Before we get started, make sure you're taking good notes. I like Cornell style, but you do whatever turns on your garbage disposal, and let's get started. When our last video, we were talking about the history of evolution. I talked about Jean Lamarck, who was on the right track, the wrong train. Remember him? He said acquired characteristics were passed on, but it's not true. It's not acquired characteristics. Characteristics are passed on, but not acquired characteristics. That's where he went wrong. All right? Darwin got it right. Let's talk about him. First of all, he was in 1859. Again, so think about the timing. We're talking like Civil War era, about then. He came up with the modern theory of evolution and natural selection. He was he failed out of college like 3 times, and his dad was a little upset. So his dad signed him up to be a naturalist on the HMS Beagle, which was a ship that was going to go around. Now think about this. 21 years old, dad signs you up for a ship that's going to go around the world for like 5 years. Okay, and the ships back then weren't all that reliable. Sometimes that you didn't come back after 5 years. You never came back. But he went, and he went as a naturalist. He stopped at a place on the Galapagos Islands. The Galapagos Islands are off of, I think, Argentina right here. They're off of Argentina, right in this area there. But you can see his journey, his 5-year journey. He started in England, went down near the west coast of Africa, down all the east coast of South America, up there, off to the Galapagos, over there, around to Australia, blah, 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 blah. Okay? But this one right here, this is where he found was interesting. And this is still World UNESCO site, which is high protected by all nations. It's got a huge amount of ecotourism. You can go there, but they only allow so many tourists a year and things like that. But you can still go visit. So what would you find there? What did he find there? Giant tortoises. Now this tortoise, by the way, is like 3 feet tall. All right, they're huge. You used to be able to, San Diego Zoo used to have one, and kids, not adults, kids used to be able to ride on them. That's not really cool, but that's what they used to do. They found marine iguanas. He found marine iguanas. They would basically they're iguanas that live on the shore. They eat algae from the bottom of the ocean, from the seafloor in 15, 20 feet of water. They dive down, but they're reptiles, so they're cold-blooded, whichever means whatever temperature the water is what temperature they become. Reptiles don't do well in the cold, so they have to come back up and sunbathe until they can heat themselves back up. But the marine iguanas. And he found finches. He found birds. These are not the most exciting looking birds. I will grant you that. They're not like you go, whoa, those are just really cool birds. They're not. But he saw something. He saw one that they were all pretty much related. They all had very similar characteristics, but they were all different. All right, and he was looking in particular at their beaks, where you can see that the different shape of the beaks based on whatever. And it was that attention to detail that he had that got him to take a look at the behavior. And what he noticed was that different birds ate and lived in different areas. So you can see the things up here. This upper bar right up here is kind of where they lived. And you can see like these are all tree dwelling. These are all ground. And this is a warbler. I don't know what a warbler is. Who cares? Okay. The middle row here is what kind of beak did they have? And again, you can look. This is a parrot-like beak. These are grasping beaks. This is probing beaks. And these over here are crushing beaks. And then he looked at what they ate. And that's on the bottom one. They eat fruit. They eat insects, cactus. Oh, I'm sorry, that's fruit over here. And then these are seeds. So you can see like the crushing beak were the seed eaters. And he figured out that basically they came from one species of finch, but they later on developed into different species, not feces. That would be really bad. He figured out that they came from one species of finch, and they developed into several species of finches. All right. So what did he learn? What he came up with was this idea of natural selection. Natural selection is a process through which organisms change slowly over time. All right. First thing he did was he took the idea that we talked about in the last video, J. Ray, that all organisms show variation. No two organisms are exactly the same. They all have variations. Most of the time, those variations don't hurt you or help you. Just because you have a different colored periwinkle clam, I know the name of it this time, periwinkle clam, that doesn't help the clam, it doesn't hurt the clam. Or does it? All right? So all organisms show variation. They're all different. And then he took the idea from an economist called Malthus, and you don't need to know that, but he's an economist who said basically all organisms produce more offspring than can survive. If the conditions are right, the organisms will continue to reproduce until the numbers and the environment can no longer hold it. What do we need to survive? We need shelter, we need food, we need water. Okay, that is what an organism needs to survive. And they will continue to grow until they run out of one of those things. So he looked at population, overpopulation. Okay, this isn't really overpopulation, but I was looking for pictures for overpopulation, and this picture came up. It's a pool in Germany, and you can see the pool kind of like right here. Okay, that's the pool. But what you probably don't notice is this is one of those like lazy river things where you just float around, and I just look at that and go, man, there's a lot of people peeing in that thing. What in the world? You never find me there. But that's overpopulation. This is overpopulation. Over here you have locusts, and you have crabs that are also populous. The numbers are so great that they end up like this. The locusts will decimate a swath of land in less than an hour. Take every single living plant organism and eat it. Okay, because there's just so many of them. Overpopulation. Here are wildebeest that are growing, in migration, and they have to cross this river. There are probably crocodiles, and there are other predators in the area, but there are so many of them that the wildebeest will continue to survive. Overpopulation, growing to the number till the environment will no longer support them. Just to give you an example, if you take, and I found this on the internet, if you take one cat, okay, and her offspring and just let them reproduce, all right, after 9 years, there's the number, 11,606,077 cats, if they were allowed to reproduce unchecked. All right, just start with one pregnant female, and let her litters keep reproducing. After 9 years, 11 million. That's overpopulation, because assuming they had shelter, they had food, they had water, they would continue to grow. If the conditions are right, they would continue to grow and continue to reproduce. What prevents them from doing that? Conditions aren't right. Lack of food, lack of shelter, lack of water. Okay? If you have a lack of food, a lack of shelter, a lack of water, you have competition. All right? You want to survive. No organism wants to die. No one. Nobody. Human beings are the only ones that commit suicide. All right? Everything else will fight to live. No organism wants to die. That creates competition. Meaning that like this is a food web, and the food web shows you the direction of the things that are the energy flow in an environment. So this squirrel, okay, the hawk wants to eat it, the fox wants to eat it. That's a competition. There's a limited number of squirrels. Hawks and foxes are competing against each other. If we're looking at the mouse, we're looking at a fox eating it, the hawk eating it, and a snake eating it. That's a competition. Now, they're not going out and fighting each other, but one of them is going to be able to eat the mouse where the other ones can't. All right? That's a competition. Overpopulation creates competition. If you have competition, you have a survival of the fittest. Survival of the fittest doesn't mean who's the stronger and who can beat the crap out of the other one. It means that some organisms, because of that variation, because of J. Ray and that variation that he's talking about, some of them are better suited to surviving. That's survival of the fittest, okay? It doesn't have, like I said, it doesn't have to be strength. It doesn't have to, it's just some variation, all right? Tall people make better basketball players. It's that's true. Doesn't make them stronger, better. It just, if survival were based on who could play basketball, tall people would have an advantage, okay? Survival of the fittest. Because of those variations, some organisms are better suited to survive than others. For instance, these giraffes. This guy right over here is tall. He can reach the leaves. He survives, or she, whatever, okay? What's the next generation? A lot more of them are tall because they're the ones that survive. These guys here, they dead. They die. They dead? What the hell is that? They die, all right? Survival of the fittest. That variation in height, the tall ones survive. You see here mice in a field. Two different colors, white, light ones and dark ones. The hawk comes by, which one stands out better? It's just a variation of color. Doesn't make them stronger, doesn't make them anything else like that. But one of them stands out better. The hawk, who is hunting by sight, finds the light-colored ones more easily, quicker, and therefore is able to kill those, leaving only one white one, but then there's three of the darker ones. They have a better, they're more fit to survive. Survival of the fittest. All right? If you survive, you can reproduce. If you reproduce, you can pass on, because of genetics, because of DNA, you can pass on the trait that allowed you to survive. So if we're talking about the gray mice and the white mice, if the gray ones survive, they can pass on that color to their offspring. If you're dead, you don't reproduce. Dead things don't reproduce. Don't go into there. My point is that if you survive, you can pass that trait on that allowed you to survive. Therefore, your offspring will also be able to maybe survive better. That's natural selection. Nature selecting the traits based on being able to survive in the environment that are being passed on. If you have a trait that doesn't allow you to survive, you don't pass it on. All right? If you survive and reproduce and you change enough, you could become a new species. That's how speciation takes place. So real quickly, let's review. We talked about Darwin. Darwin was a naturalist on the HMS Beagle, went around the world for 5 years, stopped in the Galapagos Islands, where he looked at finches. From that, he came up with the idea of natural selection. What's natural selection? All organisms show variation. All organisms will reproduce until they're overpopulated. So we have variation and we have overpopulation. And overpopulation just means the environment can no longer support them because there's not enough shelter, not enough water, not enough food. That creates competition because no organism wants to die. Competition leads to survival of the fittest. Because of those variations in the organisms, some of them are better suited to survive in that environment. Survival of the fittest. If you survive, you can pass on, you can reproduce, and you can pass on the traits that allowed you to survive. If it's the color of your fur, then you can pass that on that allowed you to survive. If it's your size, you can pass it on to be able to survive. If it's the ability to eat a certain kind of plant and digest it, whereas other organisms can't, that's a trait that's genetic and you can pass it on. If you pass on enough changes and the changes occur long enough, you come up with speciation. Charles Darwin, the natural selection. I hope you took notes. If you have any questions, ask me in Ed Puzzle or in class or when we review it in the Pear Deck. Good luck.